and welcome to Food, Views and Big Ideas. I'm Tanya Barr.
And I'm Lucy Allon, and this is the podcast from us here at Straight to the Source.
In this podcast, we will be introducing you to the people who are driving our food and hospitality industry forward, whether it be on the land, in the water, in the kitchen, or from the boardroom.
Each of our guests are playing a significant role in the evolution of Australia's food identity and culture, and we want you to know who they are, their views and their big ideas. We're coming to you today from Camaragal land, and we'd like to begin by paying our respects to elders past, present and emerging. And we extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here today. Hi everyone, it's Lucy here with you today, and welcome back to another episode of Food, Views and Big Ideas. Joining me in the studio today is Serena Zipf, the owner of Rocky Point Aquaculture. Located on Moreton Bay, halfway between Brisbane and the Gold Coast, the business is a pioneering success story, cultivating award-winning sustainable cobia and grouper for the seafood industry. But success hasn't come easily. In 2016, disaster struck the family business when their thriving $1.5 million prawn farming operation was devastated by an outbreak of the notorious white spot disease. Their prawn crop was obliterated and their hatchery, once a lifeline for other growers, had to shut down. So they took a daring gamble, venturing into cultivating 2 new fish species and emerged as industry trailblazers. Serena, welcome to the studio. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Lucy.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. There's so much I want to cover about your journey to where you are today with Rocky Point Aquaculture. But before we get to that, I thought let's start with the history of this family-owned business. Where and how did it all start?
So the family have been on the land for 150 years, originally pioneers of sugarcane growing in that area. It's the only green belt left between Brisbane and the Gold Coast that's undeveloped. Basically, a boatload of German immigrants came onto some swampland and put irrigation systems in and started to industrially cultivate sugarcane, and then built what is still now the smallest sugar mill in Australia.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So not just aquaculture where you are today, but started off with sugarcane farming. Correct.
That's the origins of it, and aquaculture was the diversification, basically.
And so when did the family head into aquaculture?
Around 1990 in earnest. Certainly, there was a feel that the heydays of sugarcane growing were over. Industrial giants like Brazil could do it cheaper, and therefore there needed to be a pivot, before that word became famous in COVID, to a new future in agriculture if they were to continue on the land as they had been.
So was that something that they were completely new to, or was there a reason for heading into aquaculture?
Just completely new, wow. Something that was a bit of a passion because of the proximity to water. So the farm itself, though landlocked, is only less than a kilometre away from Moreton Bay Marine Park and from the Logan River. Also ideally situated to reach markets, only 30 minutes to Brisbane and Gold Coast Airport. And also being where we are, apparently the least temperature variant range in the country. So in terms of growing seafood, in a less risky way, there was certainly a lot of things going for it, as well as definitely proximity to town and being able to access really good quality staff and being able to do research with scientists and universities.
And so the family headed into prawn farming?
Yes.
And particularly why prawns? Was there a reason for that species?
As it was the fish, there have been quite a bit of work done by the research community, seeded by the government to start with. And so if you can't get a breeding program, you pretty much don't have a start. So that certainly, there was a start, if you like. And then as the industry rapidly developed in southeast Queensland, then there was a lot more investment by the industry into fine-tuning the research. And so we, said we wanted to be the chicken of the sea. We wanted to be able to reliably produce, know exactly how many number of days it would take to grow the animal, get it to market. And it's certainly very close to that before white spot hit.
Right. So you had 26 years of experience in prawn farming, and you'd built that business up. Can you take us back to that pivotal moment in 2016 when the prawn farming operation was wiped out by the white spot disease. How did you cope with such a devastating setback?
So the first detection had been in November 2016. We were, in fact, the very last farm to get the disease. And part of the measures that we deployed, which we thought would successfully stave off the disease, in fact, then bore us in good stead for the subsequent fish operation. But essentially, with the initial news that disease had hit the system, we basically closed our waterways. So we didn't put any water back out into the ocean. We didn't take any back in. And we started to learn again how to basically clean our own water by cycling it through our own properties. And so you can imagine as each farm went down, there was an increasing sense of dread that there seemed to be a sense of inevitability about it. But the longer we were able to keep going, the more the hope grew that we would escape it in some fashion. So although it was obviously less surprising than the first detection, it was nevertheless still as devastating. And I think we didn't sleep for 3 or 4 days after that, just dealing with the consequences and negotiating with government and dealing with the animals on site as well.
And so why the decision not to go back to prawn farming? Like what was the situation? Like why did you decide to pivot into farming a whole different species, 2 different species?
So in essence, the major consequence of the disease outbreak on all the farmers in our river system is that because we have international obligations, the federal government closed us down for 2 years. So we had to do something, or we had with the staff, with the property, and we thought that it would be a good time to try fish farming, as we always had wanted to do, but never had enough time to. There was also a real sense of, I'm a real believer in respecting history. And there were only 2 countries in the world that had not had this particular prawn disease. Everywhere else, the disease pretty much had traveled, a long way within the space of 5 years. So my sense of feel was that despite the best efforts of the government to eradicate it, we had let the genie out of the bottle and there was no return, and it would only be a matter of time before the disease hit our river system as well as spread. And in fact, that's what's happened.
Right. So, yeah, it was thinking about what the future might hold and working out how to make yourself resilient against that potential continuation of outbreak.
So, yeah, ostensibly, even though it seemed almost mad to start again and to take a complete risk growing 2 species that we'd never done before, and fish, not prawns, to me, on the balance of probabilities, I was almost more certain that there'd be a reemergence of the disease. And, were it to happen again, there would be no assistance from the government and we would bear the full cost of the cleanup and the eradication. And that's substantial.
Yeah, I can imagine. So really, gosh, facing the possibility of losing almost everything, 25, 26 years worth of work and legacy, that must have been such a daunting prospect. How did you stay motivated and resilient in the face of all that adversity? That feels like a huge mountain to climb.
I think there were 2 prime motivators. One was our staff. Most of them had joined us as graduates, and so we'd had them for a very, very long time. I know almost every member of their family. I've been to many of their weddings. My children have been involved in their weddings.
Yeah.
And pleasingly, 2 of them, we have Next Gen now working for us as well. So they have their sons working on the property with them. So, how could I look these people in the eye and just say, look, I'm taking a check from the government and I'm going, see you later. There was very much a sense of how would we feel to just leave 150-year history under these circumstances. And the other one was the opposite driver. Frankly, it was the motivation to be around for long enough to see that justice was done and that we would and as you know, the farmers and other people in the supply chain are now in a class action suing the federal government. Very much that sense of justice and, let's fix this so it doesn't happen again, not just for us, but for other prawn producers in the country. So there were 2 Senate inquiries. There was a lot of media a lot of media. And, it was getting the word out there that we can do better and we need to try and find a balance as a country between our trade obligations as well as protecting what we have here, which is in many respects so unique as a food production country.
Yeah, absolutely. And were you heavily involved in that yourself from a class action and Senate hearing perspective?
Yes, I was. My kids recall seeing me at the kitchen table when they went to bed and then still at the kitchen table when they woke up for school the next morning for quite a long time after that.
That's incredible. What an inspiring approach to an incredible challenge that you were faced with. And then, as you said, so you took a pretty huge gamble. You repurposed all of your infrastructure and equipment. Why the species that you headed into cultivating? Why cobia and groper?
Well, as it was with the prawns, basically research had been done by the Queensland government into the breeding aspects of these fish, and they were suited temperately to where we are, and we believed that there was a market for it and that potentially would be able to grow it quite comfortably, and fingers crossed, at the same time as we were able to increase our production. So certainly there were no guarantees, but at least we knew we had a starting point. There were researchers close to us who knew how to breed them that we could access. And we believed that there was a strong market out there, albeit that two novel species that really are not. The grouper is a protected species, so it's not commercially caught, but known in Asia as the Rolls Royce of all fish, and hoping to honestly expose that to a Western palate and see it used in very different ways.
So you've got these two new species and as you said, not really very familiar to the market of people you wanted to sell them to, i.e. chefs and consumers. How did you go about marketing and promoting these species? Like, where did you start? How did you first put the fish into the market and put forward the benefits of these new species and what they offered? I guess, first of all, chefs, is that where you started with the industry?
Yes. So I rang a friend and said, I know nothing about selling fish. We'd had an export office in Japan for our prawns. But certainly, once we knew we actually had a crop to harvest and something to sell, then it was time to go and get some help. And that's when I was introduced by a mutual friend to, she's known as the fish girl.
Uma.
Uma, and I remember bringing her on to the farm with our mutual friend, and she'd said afterwards that she had never seen fish that fresh, and she was quite excited. And so really I was in her hands because she's an industry veteran, and she had actually ironically previously marketed the very first cobia to be grown in Australia with her previous employer. So very much we were growing together as two women in business at the infancy, and it's been an exciting ride. We're very strong women as well, so some of our discussions are strong, but there's ultimately the respect for each other and the journey that we've both been on to try and achieve what we are trying to do in business. So that's where we started. And the strategy was very much, put it in front of influencers, people who you respect who will give you the honest opinion. And obviously, you cannot imagine the terror, Lucy, when we first caught the fish ourselves and cooked it up because, I said to my staff, well, I can't lie, so if it's horrible, we're in trouble. So it passed my home cook test and then went to the ultimate test, who's my mother, who's an absolutely superb cook and also brutally Singaporean, so pulls no punches at all.
Tells you exactly what she thinks.
Yeah, so once it passed the mum test, and I was pretty confident it was going to do pretty well out there. I also tried to destroy it in the kitchen, basically. Also gave it to some acquaintances who I know are not so great in the kitchen and just asked them to try their best to destroy it. So there were some home tests, if you like, but the ultimate test was really putting it in front of the people who really know what produce looks like and just asking them for their opinion.
So from the early days of cultivating the fish to now, has much changed in the way that you cultivate it to meet feedback and improve the quality of what you're doing?
Yes. The quality is probably the thing that we haven't had to change in the sense that we've always ikijimi brain spiked every fish individually. And that's something we learned from the Japanese a very, very long time ago, except with prawns, we use ice. So with fish, we just had to adopt our methods. But the general principles around harvesting seafood so it arrives in the best possible condition, those principles were known to us already. That's why we were able to successfully export. It was more about, if you imagine, this is one big science experiment. We grow a fish to one size, we put it out there and we say, well, what do you think? Some chefs said, I love it. Others said, I like it a lot bigger. Others, a lot smaller. So then that's how you refine and develop it. And then we start to see chefs really play with it. And almost, so for example, Josh Nyland does kingfish ham, basically a cobia ham at Christmas time. And so that's a very specific size fish for a very specific limited time of the year. Things like that. So that certainly we've a lot of very interactive feedback with the chefs, determining even market by market who wants what size at what time of the year. It's been that intricate and really layering it down, so that I almost can tell you now, well, what Melburnians like to eat at what time of the year and what size it is and how it will be prepared.
Yeah. So you've really had to get out there with Uma, the fish girl, who we've had on our podcast before, to really get to understand the market nuances, like city to city, state to state, which it is all very different and variable. But, with Josh Nyland using your fish, you've obviously managed to influence the influencers, which is absolutely amazing. But it's not just about the quality of the fish. Sustainability is at the heart of what you do. So tell us a little bit about the focus you place on farming sustainably and how you came to the methods that you use now to do that.
So going back to the days post disease outbreak, and we had previously done some world first trials with CSIRO and with some groups around the universities in terms of what we call basically recirculating water, where we basically take water in once from the ocean, and during the course of the growing season, we would just clean it ourselves by running them through a series of mechanical and biological processes, and then basically under the terms of our license. So we are in the dirtiest river system in Queensland. In fact, the quality of the water we take in is actually dirtier than the quality of the water that we used to put back out.
Wow.
And unlike other farmers who can, basically silently leach contaminants back into the system, our farms all have a pipe where you can actually go and very specifically test what your impacts on the environment are. So we are undoubtedly under the most stringent license conditions, I would say, in the world because of that. So that work was initially done so that the farmers, in fact, on the Logan River could actually gain a permanent license from the state government. So during the days after the outbreak, we knew that, if we had any chance of succeeding it, we had to stop taking water in from the ocean, but it also meant then we had to clean our own water, clean enough to be able to reuse it. So given a chance to start again with a clean slate with the fish, and bearing in mind, the biosecurity risks as well, because these fish also have their own particular diseases that wipe out the entire crop overnight, we decided that we would do it this way so that we would not be subject to the environment in such a risky way again. So that's really the start of it. And the means of achieving it successfully are still being worked out and being evolved. But certainly it was a pillar that the staff and I had said that we wanted to really be able to establish, given the chance to start again afresh.
Yeah. So, you were really offered a quite a unique opportunity, I guess, to sort of stop and reflect and be able to start again and bringing all these considerations into play. And where do you take your lead from? Like, where do you look to for guidance and assistance in how you continue to improve your methods, both in cultivating the fish and in your sustainability considerations?
So really, for me, there's a few key things, and it's about which lever you can pull where with the available technology. And I've always been a great believer, and we've really had the benefit of collaboration with, honestly, people cleverer than than us. I'm the only non-scientist in the organization. So I say I'm always the dumbest person in the room in a staff meeting, and I'm more than happy with that. I'm guided by, incredibly enthusiastic, passionate, young scientists who have come on board as well, our recent graduates. So universities, and they know that we're a very willing research partner as well as government. So typically a research project will involve ourselves, a university, and state or federal government. And, they center around basically the obvious things like feed, contaminants, electricity. So those are things where there's some technologies out there. So, for example, using floating solar platforms to fuel the aeration. That the science is not settled on that yet.
Mm-hmm. Watch this space.
Yes. And using oysters as a biofilter. So we currently have oysters in there, which I'm really hoping will succeed, because I love to think that I'll have my private oyster supply.
So will they be for commercial offer?
At this moment, we are trialing a few things. We are actually working on that with the Queensland government and with the rest of the oyster industry. We are the sentinel in terms of there's some disease trials going on there that theoretically, if the disease were to hit everybody else, we should be immune. It will help the oyster farmers answer some questions about how to get around this disease. But secretly, obviously, I am hoping that we'll be able to grow a lot of oysters. There's also potentially a carbon offset aspect as well. And for me, that's probably one of the blue sky things which really excite me. Not so much the monetary value from being able to sell it as a carbon credit, but if you think that if we were able to extrapolate the results of this research, if it pans out the way we think it may, then, Pacific communities potentially could be paid to grow oysters. And because they're a subsistence community, then they can actually then obviously feed themselves with that as well. So for me, those are things that really keep me quite excited. So over Christmas, I was in Amsterdam, and I had the honor of spending 2 days with the world expert basically on this. And it was incredible what I learned from him and the, learnings. So I'm really grateful, and the University of Queensland really helped me organise that particular meeting. So there's some principles around that, some projects that we're trying to design up now, which will involve really measuring what that they can possibly do, not just oysters, but a few other things. But we're starting off with oysters.
Oh, that's so exciting. You're giving me goosebumps. You're really at the forefront of some incredible, research and pioneering opportunities that, as you said, could really change the opportunity for communities to be sustainable. It's incredible. So last year, Rocky Point Aquaculture was named the delicious Harvey Norman Produce Awards Producer of the Year, which is the ultimate trophy. And as project manager of the awards, I had the wonderful job of picking up the phone and telling you that you'd won that award. And I'll never forget the disbelief in your voice, followed very quickly by incredible excitement when I told you. Winning such a prestigious national award just 5 years after, what was a tremendously challenging setback is really quite an achievement. What do you think sets you apart, and what led to you achieving this incredible award?
I'm not sure anything sets me apart other than this ridiculous desire to never give up, sometimes to my own detriment. But I think we all like to think that, there's a why in our work and there's a purpose. And to me, money is the least motivator. And in fact, one of the sessions I sat in at London Business School last year basically said there is a point where there is enough pay. And certainly the studies coming out now about millennials say that, they're going to be more drawn in the next 10 years to companies which are not just about profitable sustainability in the economic sense, but also in an environmental sense. So for me, it's not so much about leaving a personal legacy, but I've been placed in a situation where I may be able to make a difference. And, my children grew up absolutely loving the ocean, fishing, surfing, diving. And I would like to think that my grandchildren will have exactly the same opportunity to go and see, the most incredible places on earth under the sea, because I've had that opportunity, and it would be just gorgeous if they could do that too.
I think what sets you apart personally, I think, is your determination and your drive and your never give up spirit. And I think that's definitely what's put Rocky Point Aquaculture at the forefront of what it's doing now. But what did the Delicious Award mean for the business? Did it have any effects?
It well and truly put us on the map. So this year, nearly 12 months on, we are national for the first time, and we've just started exporting. And thanks to Instagram, which I had to be bullied into using by Uma, that genuinely, is your direct line to chefs and to decision makers as to what you do and why you do it. And, another really valuable lesson I learned from London Business School was don't sell, tell your story. And certainly I know that a lot of chefs who are resistant to the idea of an aquaculture product because of what they had seen and read in the media about how it may have been done elsewhere, if I can get them on the farm and show them what we do, I've not had one leave with an altered opinion of how it could be done sustainably and the quality of the product that can come out of that process. There's definitely a trade-off. I could be making a lot more money. There's absolutely no doubt about that. But it would be at the cost of the environment. And what's been so wonderful is meeting like-minded chefs and people in the industry who also have the same values and say, we want to leave the ocean a better place when we leave the planet. And we're going to also choose to make less money because we could buy fish that's a lot cheaper than yours. But this is sustainable, and we want to support this.
That's amazing. Just going back to a point you made earlier about yourself and Uma, two women going out to sell these unknown species to chefs who are, can be an intimidating group to approach with a new product or ingredient. What has your experience of being female leaders in the Australian seafood industry been like? What is female representation like, and how have you found being a female in the industry? Has it been tough? Has it been exciting? Have you been accepted? What's your experience been?
Generally, and I hate to stereotype it, but this has been the general experience. The older the gentleman, the more traditional the response is. So certainly there've been some, I myself have sat on some boards where it was very clear I was not welcome, which added to my enjoyment of the experience, actually.
And your determination to be there?
Well, a lot of these were ministerial appointees as well. So, I was asked. I didn't ask to be there. But certainly, as we know now, the average Australian, what the average Australian looks like has changed dramatically over the last few decades. And women in business, also, we account, I think, for the largest growth in small business owners now. So obviously we're here to stay, and it's a case of encouraging each other. And I think Madeleine Albright, former Secretary of State, said there's a special place in hell for women who don't help other women. And that's certainly my belief.
I love that. I think, like I said, it can be quite intimidating going out to an industry that has certain expectations and traditions, and I think you and Uma have certainly blown it out of the water with what you've achieved with Rocky Point Aquaculture, which leads me, I guess, to wonder what's next. Like, what's on the horizon for Rocky Point Aquaculture? Is there anything you can tell us about that chefs, industry and consumers can look forward to in the future for the business?
We have a new fish that we will be unveiling around January or February.
Wow.
And it's very pretty. I'm not allowed to say anything more. But you will be seeing it in limited numbers on restaurant tables around the country. So it's once again a case of, let's see what else people would like, what we think we can grow. And I like to not have all my eggs in one basket as well. So I have a white blessed fish. I have the cobia that's only available seasonally. I have a fish that's, high-end, available year-round. And so I think it's about finding a fish for every market that I could possibly hit. We are looking to also expand export as well. We've had extremely strong export interest from Milan, from California, and from Canada. And we simply just cannot produce enough fish for what's out there at the moment. And gearing up for export is a completely different ball game again. And we had always said that for the first few years, we wanted to focus on being able to get our breeding program to where we need it to be so we could, reliably breed these animals ourselves, and also getting the basics right and getting the quality right before we, attempted to do anything else. Because in the export market, you get one shot at it, and it's got to be done well from the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. Why do you think those three particular markets have shown interest? You said Milan, Canada, and
California. Yeah.
Why those three markets, do you think? What's been what's piqued their interest?
Well, ironically, and actually we've already started, we're in Hong Kong and Singapore now. We've sent trials to Tokyo. Ironically, it's Aussie chefs who have used the product here and who have gone, far and wide and asking for the product there, but also the power of Instagram, people really seeing what we're doing here. It's unique. It's high end. It's high end at the moment, and it's going to be for a while until we can basically, for want of a better word, industrialize in terms of, bring down our costs. And that will only occur when we grow a lot more fish than we currently are. So being exposed to those chefs via incredible power of Instagram. Thank you, Uma. I was wrong. Yeah, and, influencers like Josh Nyland. I mean, this year we made our Australian Open debut with Josh Nyland and staying in a queue for 45 minutes, queuing for the group gravy roll was just such a thrill, and just doing box pox, anonymously with the punters. That was incredible.
Oh, that really is incredible. And yeah, we know many, many chefs that are using your beautiful fish. And I think, all the recognition and success that you have earned has been incredibly well deserved. It's such an inspiring journey. And we can't wait to hear more about what happens on the oyster research front, but also we'll be keeping our ears and eyes tuned for the announcement of the new fish coming soon. I hear you have a minister waiting for you, so I'm not going to keep you too much longer, but thank you so much for joining us, Serena. It's been a real pleasure chatting to you today. We love what you guys do, and we very much look forward to seeing what's ahead.
Thank you, Lucy. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you so much for tuning in with us today. We really hope you enjoyed listening as much as we've enjoyed the conversation. You'll find links to anything mentioned in today's chat in the show notes. We have some extraordinary guests lined up, and we'd love for you to join us again. Please make sure you're following us on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss future episodes. We'd love feedback, good or bad, or perhaps a guest you'd love to hear from. Please just let us know. And the best way to stay up to date with what we're doing, who we're talking to, and where you'll find us around the country is to become part of our Straight to the Source community at straighttothesource.com.au/community. Until next time.